Hello everyone, my name is Fatima Begum and I'd like to discuss some privacy concerns with Facebook and Twitter. Alright, I'd like to begin with an introduction to what a social network is. According to dictionary.com, it is a website where one connects with those who are sharing personal or professional interests, place of origin, or education at a particular school. And as we know, the two most famous kinds of social networks are Facebook and Twitter today. So Facebook is a social networking site founded back in 2004. It is a platform where users can build connections with other people on Facebook by becoming friends with them. And Twitter is just a little different. It is also a social network that is a micro-blogging service, and this allows users to send and receive messages called tweets. And those messages are usually up to 140 characters long. Alright, also just some stats to start with so we can see the social media revolution that we're experiencing right now. Social media is currently the #1 activity on the web. And out of that, Facebook is the #1 website. That is the most visited website today, which has over 600 million active users, and they post more than 1.5 million pieces of content every single day on Facebook. Twitter has 190 million users, and all the users post 65 million tweets every day on Twitter. And Twitter reports that 2 to 3 new accounts are activated every second on its site. So, and as we speak, this community is probably growing and getting larger. Okay. I'd like to talk about some of the privacy concerns that come when we use Facebook. Firstly, most of us might know this already. Our profile on Facebook is public by default. So when we sign up, and we put our stuff on there, it is by default viewable by everybody on Facebook. So whether it's your pictures or information about you or who you're friends with. So if our information is made public, one thing we can't be sure of is who might possibly be viewing our profile. And it could definitely be your friends, people who you have granted access to view your profile. But if it's public, there can be other people out there who are viewing it. For example, law enforcement could view it, your employers could view it, and they're always keeping a tag on what employees are saying on Facebook. And we've even seen instances where people have lost their jobs for something they might have said inappropriate on the site. So even when we keep our information private, if you have a private profile, there's still information that Facebook sends out to third-party applications. And these are applications, for example, like when we play a game or when we take a quiz on Facebook, we have to click on an agree button before we can do that. And when we click on that agree button, we're letting Facebook send over an ID to the third-party app that you can then use to access your profile. And the next point is that personal information is also constantly shared with advertisers. So whatever you like on Facebook, when you click the like button, or whatever you put down as an interest or a hobby, and also information that you might be searching on the internet. For example, stuff you might just search randomly on Google or Yahoo. All that stuff is collected and sent over to advertisers so they can provide you with better ads. So when you log onto Facebook and you see an ad of something that you might like on your Facebook page, that's not a coincidence. That's actually being pulled from the information that you have on your browser history or on your Facebook. Also, Facebook now has search result integration, which means that if you want, you can make your profile visible on Google search results. And this will actually not only make your profile visible to people on Facebook, but then anybody across the internet who might be searching for you. Okay, I'd like to take a look at some of the privacy concerns with Twitter. Also on Twitter, when we have a public account, all their tweets are public, which means that it's not just people who are following you, but anybody on Twitter or even general on the internet that can view your tweet. Also, another concern could possibly be of who you are allowing to follow you. So whether you know your followers or not, and what information you are giving to possibly strangers by allowing them to follow your tweets. Also, public tweets are indexed by search engines, and as of 2010, all the major search engines, Yahoo, Google, Bing, they all have deals with Twitter to display tweets on their search engines, which means that you might not remember something you tweeted, like say like 2 months ago, but if that tweet is public and it's relevant to someone else's search query, then it will show up on the Google results page. Also, starting in 2010, April, Twitter has donated its entire library of tweets to the Library of Congress, which means that any public tweet made on Twitter is also archived in the Library of Congress. Lastly, I think the most important thing to remember is that when you make your account on Twitter private, that only affects all your future tweets. So if you already have something that is public and that is continued to be kept as a public tweet, and it will still be archived in the Library of Congress, or it will still show up in Google search results. Okay, I'd like to discuss a couple of websites that are out there. This one called lovelyfaces.com is a dating site that was just launched this year in February. And this site was made headlines on its first day because it had 250,000 people registered on that. And a lot of people wondered how that happened. And not surprisingly, this site stole 250,000 publicly available user profiles from Facebook, and they put it on this dating site. And the information on that site included people's names, pictures, locations, anything that they had made publicly available on Facebook. And they went even further, the makers of the site, and they classified each face into a personality type using a facial recognition system. And so here you can see people are classified as funny men or easygoing women and whatnot. So this is an example of how publicly accessible information can be misused. And so you probably want to think about this. If you have a public profile, you might even want to check if your face is actually on here. And if it is, then you can ask the users to remove it. And they do say that they will remove it. So just in case you find yourself on here. The other site is Spokio.com. This one I think is very interesting, and I was personally very shocked to see all the information that it has about you. This website launched in 2006. It's a social network aggregator, which means that it collects information from online and offline social networks and then puts it all together into one user profile. And this is pretty astonishing, the information it has on here. It has a person's complete name, their complete address. You can see there's a phone number on here, there's the members in the family, your age, your marital status, even the worth of your home. And this is just like a basic profile. If you click on the other tabs, like if you click on the property tab, it even shows you a satellite image of the person's home. And if you click on the family tab, it will even tell you like how many members are in the home and how long they've been living in that house. So this site does collect information from offline sources, but if you have any publicly available information on Facebook and Twitter, that is definitely going to be showing up on Spokio. So now there's also a way you can opt out of this. If you definitely want to search yourself on here and see if you're there. And if you are, you can go to the site's privacy section and ask yourself to be removed. Okay, so now after taking a look at like some of the implications of having public profiles, I'd like to provide some ways we can prevent our privacy on Facebook and Twitter if we'd like to. And I think the first thing to do is to use the friend list that we have on Facebook. Facebook provides a number of lists that you can use and have control who sees what on your profile. So you might have, let's say, hundreds, or some people have thousands of friends. You can make different lists and put your friends into different lists, and based on that, on the privacy settings of each group, you can control what they see on your profile. You can also modify the search results, which means that you can allow Facebook to know if you want everybody on Facebook to be able to search you, no one to be able to search you, or let's say only your friends or your networks and so on. Also, one thing that experts recommend is to avoid being shown on a Google search results. if you'd like your website, if you'd like your page to be like a website for yourself, it might be a good idea to have a public profile like that. But many people don't want themselves to show up on Google results. And that you can do by unchecking a box in the privacy settings that will remove your profile from the search results. Also, you can protect your albums. Facebook has somewhat different privacy settings for albums where you have to set it individually for each photo album. And if you have a privacy for your account, let's say it's a private account, you're not sharing much information with other people, yet you have a photo album that might have a privacy visible to everybody, then that overrides your other privacy, and then people are going to be able to see your pictures. So it's just something to be aware of, that privacy has to be set separately from your photo albums. Also, if you poke somebody or reply to somebody you don't know, you are giving them access to your profile for 30 days. So that is something you want to remember when you're interacting with someone you might not be friends with. A last thing, I thought this one was a little relevant. You do want to make sure when you're posting information about others on your account, let's say pictures of somebody else, you want to make sure that it is with their consent, because you could be infringing on someone else's rights by putting information about them on your site, on your page. Alright, and just some examples of how we can protect ourselves on Twitter. If we'd like to protect our tweets, we can make our Twitter account private, which would still make it available to all our followers. They can still see it and follow our tweets. But this, protecting your account would mean that it would not show up in Google search results, for example. It would not be in the Twitter's public timeline, and it would also not be archived to the Library of Congress. You can also control who is following you, and this can be quite beneficial if you want to keep your account for a limited set of people. Then you can actually control who you are allowing access to view your profile on Twitter. Also, it's recommended that you avoid disclosing your location. It's an unnecessary risk mostly to let anybody know where you are. So if you have a friend or someone you want to know, let know where you are, you can always send them a personal message. So this feature is turned off by default on Twitter, and it is recommended that we leave it off our location setting. Last, I think the most important thing to do when you're tweeting is to use common sense. You've got to be discreet in what you're saying, and remember that even if you choose to make your account private at a later time, your public tweets are going to remain public, and you will still be responsible for what you post. And I just have a quick example of what a good and bad tweet on Twitter would look like. And hopefully we can use this hint when we tweet next. The last thing I'd like to say is just some important points that we can remember. Facebook and Twitter are great services, but they are free, and so they generate business through the user accounts that we have with them, and they want us to share as much information as we can with them so they can make money and they can provide us with all the ads and whatnot that they do. Also, no site is 100% secure, so you want to remember Facebook has some great privacy measures in place that we can use, but ultimately it's not 100% secure, and we've seen many instances in the past where there have been a lot of privacy breaches where people's personal and maybe sensitive information has been exposed. So we also want to remember that there's probably 100% security is probably a rare thing. And also, even if you have a private profile, like I said, it can be very well hacked or exposed in a private breach, so you just want to remember that. And the last thing is that we are responsible for what you post, and this is a virtual identity that you're creating online. So whether it's Facebook or Twitter, you have to be careful of what you post, and it might come and haunt you later when you least expect it. So you just want to keep that in mind when you're posting anything. So as I just stated before, I'd like to say, we don't have to get paranoid about our information on Facebook and Twitter and our privacy. These are great mediums of communication that we can utilize to, share information with our friends and peers, and we can also try to safeguard ourselves at the same time. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you for your time.